Maya stirred her iced latte absently, watching the condensation drip down the glass as Jake paced behind her dorm room chair like a caged animal. His usually perfect brown hair was disheveled from running his hands through it, and his jaw was set in that stubborn line she'd come to recognize over their 2 years of friendship. "I can't believe Elena did this to me," he muttered for the third time in 10 minutes. 2 years, Maya. 2 years I've been with her, and she's been hooking up with that guy from her psychology class. "Jake, I'm sorry, but—" Maya started, but he cut her off with a sharp gesture. "I need her to see what she's lost. I need her to feel what I felt when I saw those texts." His green eyes were blazing with hurt and anger. "That's where you come in." Maya set down her drink carefully. "Where I come in? How exactly?" Jake stopped pacing and turned to face her fully. In the afternoon light streaming through her window, she could see the exhaustion etched in his features, the way his usually confident posture had deflated. Despite everything, her heart ached for him. "The Kappa party tomorrow night. Elena will be there." He sat on the edge of her desk, leaning forward intently. "I need you to help me make her jealous." "Jake." Maya's voice carried a warning note. "Just one kiss, Maya. One public, very obvious kiss that she can't miss. Nothing more than that." His voice softened, becoming almost pleading. "You're the only person I trust enough to ask." Maya studied his face, seeing the desperation beneath his casual request. They'd been friends since their sophomore year, bonded over late-night study sessions and their shared love of terrible reality TV shows. She'd watched him fall for Elena, had even helped him pick out the necklace he'd given her for their anniversary. The same necklace Elena had probably been wearing while betraying him. "This is a terrible idea," Maya said finally, but she could already feel her resolve weakening. Jake had always been able to talk her into things, movie marathons when she should be studying, road trips to nowhere, and now this. It's just acting, Maya. Theater kids do it all the time. He reached over and took her hand, his fingers warm against hers. "Please, I just need her to see that other people find me attractive, that I'm not going to sit around moping over her." Maya sighed, knowing she was about to make a mistake. "One kiss. At the party. That's it." The relief that flooded Jake's face was immediate and overwhelming. "Thank you. God, Maya, thank you so much." 24 hours later, Maya found herself, pressed against the wall in the crowded Kappa house, Jake's hands framing her face as partygoers swirled around them with red cups and laughter. The music was loud enough to make conversation impossible, but she could see Elena across the room, her blonde hair catching the colored lights as she talked to her friends. "You ready?" Jake murmured, his breath warm against her ear. Maya nodded, expecting to feel awkward or self-conscious. This was just a performance after all, just helping a friend get some petty revenge. But when Jake's lips met hers, soft and insistent, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. His kiss was nothing like the casual, friendly pecks they'd exchanged at New Year's parties. This kiss was deliberate, passionate, designed to be seen, but it felt devastatingly real. Maya's hands found themselves tangling in his shirt, pulling him closer as heat spread through her chest. She could taste the beer on his lips, could feel the racing of his pulse, where her palm pressed against his neck. For a moment that stretched into eternity, she forgot about Elena, forgot about the watching crowd, forgot about everything except the way Jake was kissing her like she was the only person in the world. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Maya caught a glimpse of Elena's stricken face before the other girl turned and disappeared into the crowd. Mission accomplished. So why did Maya suddenly feel like she'd just started something she couldn't control? The Monday morning after the party, Maya tried to convince herself that everything would go back to normal. She grabbed her usual table at Grind Coffee, opened her macroeconomics textbook, and attempted to focus on supply and demand curves. She'd made it through exactly 2 pages when a familiar voice interrupted her concentration. Mind if I join you? Maya looked up to find Jake standing beside her table, 2 coffee cups in his hands, and that crooked smile she'd known for years. Except something was different about the way he was looking at her. His gaze lingered on her lips for just a moment too long. "I brought you a caramel macchiato," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Extra shot, just how you like it." "Thanks," Maya said carefully, accepting the cup. "But don't you have your advanced statistics class right now?" "Skipped it." Jake shrugged, as if missing class was something he did regularly. It wasn't. Jake was the type who showed up 10 minutes early and sat in the front row. "Wanted to make sure you were okay after everything Saturday night." Maya felt a flutter in her stomach that she firmly ignored. "I'm fine, Jake. It was just acting, remember?" Something flickered across his expression. Disappointment? Before his easy smile returned. Right. Just acting. But he didn't leave. Instead, he pulled out his own textbook and settled in like he planned to stay. For the next hour, they studied in comfortable silence, occasionally sharing earbuds to listen to music or debating the finer points of economic theory. It felt natural, familiar, except for the way Jake's fingers would brush against hers when he passed her his pen, or how his knee would bump against hers under the small table. The pattern continued all week. Jake started appearing everywhere Maya normally spent her time. The library, the student union, even her favorite quiet spot by the lake where she liked to read. He always had a reason. Returning a book, grabbing lunch, needing help with an assignment. But Maya wasn't stupid. Jake was a straight-A student who'd never needed academic help in his life. "What's going on with you and Jake?" her roommate Sophia asked Wednesday evening, looking up from her laptop as Maya entered their dorm room with yet another coffee Jake had bought her. "What do you mean?" Maya kicked off her shoes and flopped onto her bed. "I mean, he's been texting you constantly. He walked you to class this morning, and you've been smiling at your phone like an idiot for 3 days straight." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "Please tell me you're not falling for the guy who just used you to make his ex jealous." Maya's phone buzzed with another text from Jake. "Studying tonight? I could use help with that economics problem set." She stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. The smart thing would be to maintain some distance, let things cool down. But when she thought about Jake's concentrated expression, as he worked through equations, the way he absently chewed his pen when he was thinking, the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her lately, "Library, 3rd floor, 8 p.m., she typed back. The library was nearly empty by the time Jake arrived, his backpack slung over one shoulder and his hair slightly mussed from the evening breeze. Maya had claimed a study room in the back corner, complete with a whiteboard, and comfortable chairs that encouraged long sessions. "Sorry I'm late," Jake said, settling into the chair beside her rather than across from her. "Got caught up talking to my advisor about next semester's course load." "No problem." Maya opened her textbook, trying to ignore the way his cologne seemed to fill the small space. "What did you need help with?" But as they worked through sets, Maya found herself increasingly distracted. Jake had moved his chair closer to share her textbook, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. When he reached across her to write an equation on the whiteboard, his chest pressed briefly against her back, and Maya's breath caught. "Maya," Jake said quietly, his voice much closer to her ear than she'd expected. She turned to find his face inches from hers, his green eyes serious and searching. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," she managed, though her voice came out slightly breathless. "Saturday night, when I kissed you." His gaze dropped to her lips again. "Did it feel like just acting to you?" The question hung in the air, between them, loaded with possibility and danger. Maya knew what the safe answer was, what would keep their friendship intact and uncomplicated. But looking into Jake's eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, the words that came out weren't safe at all. "No," she whispered. "It didn't." Jake's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb tracing across her cheekbone. "Good," he murmured, "because I haven't been able to stop thinking about it." This time, when he kissed her, there was no audience to perform for, no ex-girlfriend to make jealous. This kiss was just for them. Slow and deep, and full of 2 years' worth of carefully buried attraction, finally bubbling to the surface. Maya melted into him, her hands fisting in his sweater as he kissed her like he'd been starving for the taste of her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jake rested his forehead against hers. "This changes things," he said softly. "I know," Maya replied, though she wasn't sure if she was ready for what those changes might mean. Maya's coffee had gone cold 20 minutes ago, but she couldn't bring herself to move from the wooden bench where she'd been sitting since Jake texted her to meet him at the campus botanical gardens. The late afternoon sun filtered through the canopy of oak trees, casting dancing shadows across the path where students occasionally passed by with books and backpacks. She was still processing what had happened in the library 3 nights ago, the way Jake had kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning, the careful way he'd walked her back to her dorm afterward, his hand warm and steady in hers. They hadn't talked about it since, though their text conversations had taken on a new undertone of flirtation that made her pulse quicken every time her phone buzzed. "Sorry to keep you waiting." Maya looked up to find Jake approaching, but something was different about his usual confident stride. His shoulders seemed lighter somehow, and there was a brightness in his expression that she hadn't seen since before the Elena situation began. "Everything okay?" she asked, as he settled beside her, on the bench close enough that their thighs touched. "More than okay." Jake turned to face her fully, and Maya was struck again by how handsome he was. The strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled slightly when he smiled, the fullness of his lips that she now knew the taste of. "I broke up with Elena. Officially, I mean." Maya felt her stomach drop. "Jake." "I know what you're thinking," he said quickly, reaching for her hand. "But this isn't about revenge anymore, Maya. I've been thinking about this for days, and I realized something." His thumb traced circles across her knuckles, and Maya fought to keep her breathing steady. "What did you realize?" "That I've been looking at you differently for months, maybe longer." Jake's voice was soft, earnest. "I thought it was just because you're one of my closest friends, but that night at the party, when I kissed you..." God, Maya, it was like everything clicked into place. Maya wanted to believe him. God, how much she wanted to believe him. But the logical part of her brain, the part that had kept her heart safe for 21 years, was screaming warnings. "Jake, you just got out of a 2-year relationship with someone who cheated on you. Are you sure you're thinking clearly about this?" Something flickered across his face. Hurt, maybe, or frustration. But when he spoke, his voice remained patient. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He shifted on the bench, turning his body toward hers, and Maya found herself trapped between his intense gaze and the solid warmth of his presence. "Let me take you to dinner. A real dinner. Not just grabbing food between classes. Somewhere nice, where I can do this properly." "Do what properly?" "Court you," Jake said, simply, and the old-fashioned word on his lips made something flutter in Maya's chest. "Show you that this isn't some rebound thing or me trying to get back at Elena. Show you that you're the one I want to be with." Maya stared into his eyes, searching for any sign of deception or uncertainty. All she saw was sincerity and something that looked dangerously close to adoration. "Okay," she heard herself saying. "One dinner." Jake's answering smile was brilliant. "Saturday night. I'll pick you up at 7. Saturday evening found Maya standing in front of her dorm room mirror, second-guessing her choice of dress for the 3rd time. The black wrap dress was elegant, but not too formal, paired with heels that made her legs look miles long. Sophia had helped her curl her hair into soft waves that cascaded over one shoulder, and she'd applied just enough makeup to enhance her natural features without looking overdone. "You look gorgeous," Sophia said from her bed, where she was supposedly studying, but had actually been providing commentary on Maya's outfit choices for the past hour. "Jake's going to swallow his tongue when he sees you." A soft knock on the daughter interrupted Maya's response. She opened it to find Jake standing in the hallway wearing a charcoal gray suit that was clearly tailored to his lean frame. His hair was styled perfectly, and he was holding a single white rose. "Hi," he said softly, his eyes traveling over her appreciatively. "You look... wow." "Thank you." Maya accepted the rose, inhaling its delicate fragrance. "You clean up pretty well yourself." The restaurant Jake had chosen was intimate and dimly lit, with exposed brick walls and tables set with crisp white linens. The hostess led them to a corner booth that felt private and romantic, exactly the kind of place where important conversations happened. "This is beautiful," Maya said, sliding into the plush banquette. "I wanted tonight to be special." Jake settled. Beside her, rather than across from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne and feel the heat of his body through his suit jacket. Dinner passed in a blur of excellent food and easy conversation, punctuated by Jake's hand finding excuses to touch hers, adjusting her bracelet, tracing the lines of her palm, threading their fingers together on the table. By the time dessert arrived, Maya felt like she was floating on a cloud of wine and possibility. "I have something to confess," Jake said as they shared a piece of chocolate tart, his voice low and intimate in the restaurant's ambient lighting. "What's that?" Maya asked, hyper-aware of how close he was sitting, how his knee was pressed against hers under the table. "I've wanted to ask you out for months. Long before the Elena situation." His free hand came up to tuck a strand of hair behind her, the gesture achingly tender. "But I was too much of a coward to risk our friendship." Maya's breath caught. "Jake." "I know the timing isn't ideal," he continued, his thumb tracing along her jawline. "I know this all started in the worst possible way. But Maya, what I feel for you is real. More real than anything I ever felt with Elena." Before Maya could respond, Jake was leaning in, capturing her lips in a kiss that was soft and sweet and full of promise. She melted into him, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, where she could feel his heart racing beneath her palm. When they broke apart, Jake's eyes were dark with something that made heat pool low in Maya's belly. "Come home with me," he whispered against her lips. "Let me show you how much you mean to me." Maya knew she should say no, should insist on taking things slow, should protect her heart from the very real possibility of getting hurt. But looking into Jake's eyes, feeling the sincerity in his touch, she found herself nodding. "Yes," she breathed, and felt her carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. Maya woke up in Jake's bed with sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains, and the warm weight of his arm draped across her waist. For a moment, she let herself savor the feeling, his steady breathing against her neck, the way his fingers were loosely tangled with hers, the masculine scent of his sheets that she'd been breathing all night. Last night had been intense. Jake had been everything she'd dreamed he might be, attentive, passionate, worshipful in the way he'd touched her like she was something precious. He'd taken his time exploring every inch of her skin, whispering her name like a prayer as he brought her to heights she hadn't known were possible. But in the harsh light of morning, doubt crept in like fog rolling off the lake. Maya carefully extracted herself from Jake's embrace, gathering her scattered clothes from his bedroom floor. The black dress that had made her feel so confident last night now seemed like evidence of her poor judgment. She was pulling on her heels when Jake stirred behind her. "Where are you going?" His voice was rough with sleep, and when Maya turned, She found him propped up on one elbow, his hair mussed and his chest bare above the white sheet pooled at his waist. "I should get back to my dorm," Maya said, not quite meeting his eyes. "Sophia will be worried." Jake sat up fully, concern creasing his features. "Maya, what's wrong? Last night was... God, it was incredible. For both of us." He reached for her hand, but she stepped back, just out of his reach. "Was it?" The question came out sharper than she'd intended. Or was I just a very convenient rebound after Elena? The hurt that flashed across Jake's face looked genuine, but Maya had learned not to trust her ability to read him accurately. After all, she'd thought their kiss at the party was just acting, and look where that had led. "Is that really what you think of me?" Jake asked quietly, swinging his legs over the side of the bed and reaching for a pair of sweatpants. "That I'd sleep with you just to get back at my ex? I don't know what to think anymore." Maya wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling exposed despite being fully dressed. 3 weeks ago, you were using me to make Elena jealous. Now you're telling me you've had feelings for me for months. How am I supposed to know what's real?" Jake pulled on a t-shirt and moved toward her slowly, like she was a skittish animal he was afraid of spooking. "Maya, I know how this looks. I know the timing is terrible and I handled everything wrong from the beginning. But what happened between us last night, that was real. The way you felt in my arms, the sounds you made when I touched you, the way you said my name." His voice dropped to a whisper. That wasn't fake. Heat flooded Maya's cheeks at his words, her body responding to the memory even as her mind rebelled. "Physical chemistry isn't the same thing as real feelings, Jake. You think that's all this is? Chemistry?" Jake ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. "Maya, I broke up with Elena before we even kissed in the library. I ended a 2-year relationship because I realized I was falling for my best friend and I couldn't keep pretending otherwise." "But you didn't tell me that until after we slept together," Maya pointed out, hating how her voice wavered. "How do I know you're not just telling me what you think?" "I want to hear." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken hurt and confusion. Finally, Jake sank down onto the edge of his bed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "You don't," he said simply. "I can't prove my feelings to you with words, Maya. All I can do is show you, day by day, that this isn't some game or rebound for me. You're it for me. You always have been." Maya felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She wanted to believe him so badly it hurt, but the rational part of her mind was screaming that she was being naive. Men said all sorts of things in the aftermath of good sex. "I need some time," she said finally, moving toward his bedroom door, "to think about all of this." "Maya, wait." But she was already leaving, practically fleeing his apartment before she could be swayed by the pain in his voice or the way he'd looked at her like she was breaking his heart. The next few days passed, in a haze of avoided texts and strategic route planning around campus to avoid Jake's usual haunts. Maya threw herself into her coursework with renewed intensity, spending long hours in the library and declining Sophia's invitations to grab dinner or see a movie. But Thursday afternoon, as Maya was leaving her European history class, she nearly walked straight into Elena. "Maya!" Perfect timing. Elena's smile was bright and predatory, her blonde hair perfect despite the October wind. "I was hoping we could chat." Maya's stomach clenched, but she forced her expression to remain neutral. "What about Elena?" "About Jake, obviously." Elena fell into step beside Maya as they walked down the academic quad. "I heard you two have been spending time together lately?" "And?" Elena laughed, a tinkling sound that had probably charmed dozens of guys over the years. "Oh, honey, you don't actually think he has real feelings for you, do you?" Maya stopped walking, her books clutched tightly to her chest. "Excuse me?" Jake called me Tuesday night, Elena said conversationally, examining her manicured nails. Drunk and rambling about how he'd made a mistake, how he missed me, how sleeping with you had just made him realize what he'd lost. The words hit Maya like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. You're lying. Am I? Elena's smile sharpened. He begged me to take him back, Maya. Said he'd only been with you to try to get over me, but that it wasn't working. That he'd never feel for anyone else what he felt for me. Maya felt the world tilt dangerously around her. Elena could be lying. Probably was lying. But the seed of doubt that had been planted Sunday morning began to grow, fed by Maya's own insecurities and fears. I told him I'd think about it, Elena continued. I mean, I do love him, even if I made some mistakes. And honestly, I felt a little sorry for you. Being used like that, it must be embarrassing. Without another word, Maya turned and walked. Away, Elena's laughter following her across the quad like the sound of breaking glass. That evening, Maya sat in her dorm room staring at her phone, Elena's words echoing in her head. She'd ignored 17 texts from Jake over the past few days, but now she found herself scrolling through their message history, looking for any sign that Elena might be telling the truth. A soft knock interrupted her spiral. Maya opened the door to find Jake standing in her hallway, his face etched with worry and exhaustion. Please, he said simply, let me explain. Despite every instinct screaming at her to slam the door in his face, Maya stepped aside to let him in. He moved to the center of her small room, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, looking more uncertain than she'd ever seen him. I know you talked to Elena, he said quietly. I can see it in your eyes. Maya crossed her arms over her chest, armor against the pleading in his voice. So it's true? You called her Tuesday night? Jake closed his eyes briefly, pain flickering across his features. Yes, but not to get back together with her, Maya. Never that. Then why? Because I was scared. The admission seemed to cost him. Scared that I'd ruined everything with you. Scared that you'd never trust me. Scared that I'd lost the best thing that ever happened to me before it even really began. He took a step toward her, his green eyes intense with emotion. I called Elena to tell her once and for all that what we had was over. That I was in love with someone else, and nothing she could do would change that. Maya's heart stuttered. You told her you loved me? I told her I loved you. Jake confirmed, his voice rough with honesty. Because I do, Maya. I'm completely, desperately in love with you, and I have been for longer than I want to admit. Before Maya could respond, Jake closed the distance between them, his hands coming up to frame her face with achingly gentle fingers. I messed this up, he whispered, his thumbs tracing across her cheekbones. I know I started this all wrong, and I know you have every reason not to trust me. But Maya, you have to know. You were never a game to me. Never a rebound. You're the woman I want to wake up next to every morning for the rest of my life. And then he was kissing her, soft and desperate, and full of everything he couldn't seem to say with words. Maya's carefully constructed walls crumbled completely as she melted into his embrace, her hands fisting in his shirt to pull him closer. This time, when he lifted her onto her narrow dorm bed, Maya didn't think about consequences or timing or the possibility of getting hurt. This time she let herself fall completely, trusting that Jake would be there to catch her. 6 months later, Maya was curled up in Jake's apartment, wearing one of his old college sweatshirts and grading papers, while he made dinner in the kitchen. Spring rain drummed against the windows, creating a cozy cocoon around them as the smell of his famous pasta sauce filled the air. How many more papers do you have? Jake called from the kitchen, and Maya looked up from the essay she'd been reading. about Renaissance art to find him leaning against the doorframe, a dish towel slung over his shoulder and flour somehow dusting his dark hair. 3 more, Maya replied, setting down her red pen and stretching her arms above her head. Why? Because dinner's almost ready, and I have something I want to show you after we eat. Jake's smile held a hint of nervousness that made Maya curious. After 6 months together, she'd learned to read his moods like a favorite book, and right now he was definitely hiding something. Good something or bad something? She asked, rising from the couch to wrap her arms around his waist. Good something, I hope. Jake pressed a kiss to the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. Very good something, actually. They ate dinner by candlelight, sharing bites of pasta and talking about their days. Jake had started his master's program in January and was working part-time at a consulting firm downtown, while Maya was finishing her senior year and had already been accepted to graduate school for art history. Their lives were busy but beautifully intertwined, full of lazy Sunday mornings and late-night study sessions, and the kind of comfortable intimacy that Maya had never experienced before. After dinner, Jake disappeared into his bedroom and returned, with a manila folder that he placed on the coffee table between them. "What's this?" Maya asked, settling back onto the couch beside him. "Open it," Jake said quietly, and something in his tone made Maya's pulse quicken. Inside the folder was a lease agreement for a 2-bedroom apartment in the graduate housing complex near campus. Maya's name was listed as the primary tenant. But there was a second line left blank. "Jake?" Maya breathed, looking up to find him watching her with hopeful, nervous eyes. "I know we haven't talked about it officially," he said quickly, "but you're going to need a place to live next year for grad school, and I was thinking, maybe we could need a place together?" Maya stared at the lease, her heart hammering in her chest. They'd been practically living together for months anyway. Jake's apartment had become her second home, filled with her books and clothes and the coffee mug she'd claimed as her own. But making it official felt like a huge step. "The second bedroom could be your study," Jake continued, his words tumbling over each other in his nervousness. "You know, for all your art books and research materials. And there's good natural light for reading. And it's close to campus, and—" Maya silenced him with a kiss, soft and lingering, and full of all the love that had grown between them through months of trust rebuilt and walls torn down. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "Yes, I want to live with you." Jake's answering smile was brilliant, and he pulled her into his lap, holding her close as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. "I love you," he murmured into her hair, the words as natural as breathing now. "God, Maya, I love you so much." "I love you too," Maya replied, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Later that night, as they lay tangled together in Jake's bed, Maya traced lazy patterns across his bare chest and thought about how far they'd come. It hadn't been easy. Those first few months had required careful navigation of trust issues and insecurities, honest conversations about their past and their fears for the future. There had been moments when Maya wondered if they were moving too fast, building something on a foundation that had started with deception. But Jake had proved himself over and over again, through consistency rather than grand gestures, through showing up every day and choosing her every day until Maya's doubts had slowly dissolved. "Can I tell you something?" Maya said softly, her cheek pressed against Jake's shoulder. "Anything?" he replied, his fingers combing gently through her hair. "Sometimes I'm grateful to Elena. For cheating, I mean." Maya felt Jake's surprise in the way his hand stilled. "Because if she hadn't, you might never have kissed me at that party. And we might have spent years dancing around each other, too scared to risk our friendship." Jake was quiet for a long moment, considering her words. "I like to think I would have figured it out eventually," he said finally, "that I would have gotten brave enough to tell you how I felt. Maybe, but this way was more dramatic." Maya lifted her head to look at him, taking in his sleep-mussed hair and the soft expression in his green eyes. "More like a story." "What kind of story?" Jake asked, his thumb tracing along her jawline. Maya pretended to think about it, though she already knew the answer. "A love story. The kind where the hero makes mistakes but learns from them, where the heroine is smart enough to take a chance on something real, and where they both get their happily ever after." "I like that story," Jake said softly, pulling her up for a kiss that tasted like promises and forever. Outside, the spring rain continued to fall, washing the world clean and nurturing new growth. And inside Jake's apartment, soon to be their apartment, Maya fell asleep in the arms of the man who had started as her friend, become her lover through deception, and somehow, against all odds, ended up as her everything. Because sometimes, the wrong beginning leads to exactly the right ending. And sometimes a fake kiss becomes the most real thing you've ever felt. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person who was supposed to be temporary becomes the love of your life instead. The revenge kiss had become something neither of them had planned for. It had become their beginning, messy and complicated, and absolutely perfect in its imperfection. And Maya couldn't imagine their love story starting any other way.